my name is Gina Cohen, and this is my series called Why Art Works. I'm a classically trained sculptor, and by day I sculpt and paint realistic prosthetics for amputees as an anaplastologist. When I'm not at work, I'm a mom to 5 young children. I've loved art my whole life, and my art education has really helped me understand what makes certain pieces of art much better than the rest. And my hope for this educational series is to be able to share some of that with you. Let's go ahead and get into our artist for the day, someone who's very dear to me, Australian artist Paul Newton. I actually even have an original painting of his in the back here in my little at-home gallery. So we are going to talk about his portraits, that's plural, of Australian fashion icon Maggie Tabberer. This first portrait here was completed in 1999. This was a career catapulting painting for him. It was featured and got a ton of press in the infamous Australian Archibald art competition. It represented a real turning point in his career from where he started as an illustrator to becoming the fine art portrait painter that he is today. This has always been one of my favorite paintings of his, and I could go on and on about all the merits and great things about this painting, but today I'm actually going to talk about how it compares to this current painting that he did of Maggie Tabberer, which is also being shown in the current Australian Archibald. Now, when we look at both of these paintings together, we see a lot of similarities. He's honoring that original iconic painting he did of her with the pose, but also purposely creating a juxtaposition with the lighter color of her outfit choice versus the darker that she had when she was younger. What I would like to touch base on is what Bob Ross would call a happy accident regarding the background on this first painting. So this background, when Paul Newton was sitting with Maggie, he had come up with this pose and was very happy with this, but he took pictures of her inside, outside, and he really couldn't find something to accurately capture this statuesque, iconic woman. And he was so frustrated painting all these different backgrounds that he ended up taking the painting outside and hosing the background off. There's a great interview he's done with it. I'll link it below about this process and interviewing Maggie. It's very interesting. So this fabulous background, which had you not known better would have been a very distinctive choice, was actually like a happy accident. Is something that you will find as a younger, more inexperienced artist. You just keep pushing and pushing when you're working on a challenge in a piece until you find something that works. But as time goes by with experience, now if we're looking at the newer portrait, of course he knew that he was going to do a simple dark background, but the way he's painted this floor is very intentional. The skills that he had to represent that floor, the way they fade to the background, the way he's put the shadow in here, none of this was an accident. This was all very purposeful, and it just goes to show you that with a lot of time and experience, how much better a piece can turn out. Now, let's move on to a little bit more of the details. When I'm looking at this hand, I see a beautifully structurally sound hand. It's perfectly simplified. I love this hand. Like I said, I love this painting. There's this really graphic quality about it that just stands out. It's just so well done. But interestingly, when I'm looking at his more recent painting and I'm looking at this hand, which is purposely in the same position, his understanding of reds and blues, which is an important part of skin tone, is so much more evident. When I go back to this hand, I see mostly a tan hand, which would lend itself to an illustrator's technique, versus this hand, the lights and darks, the reds, the blues are just so much more well represented. And for me, as somebody who makes realistic prosthetics that someone wears, skin tone is so important. So now I've zoomed way in to a close-up of this hand, and you can see, as far as the maturity and boldness of the strokes, you can see how very defined, informed strokes create the structure of this hand. Not a lot of like insignificant tiny marks. Now what's really cool is if we scroll over to this hand, it's a lot harder to pick up the strokes. And while it still looks good, the boldness of the strokes here really give the hand a lot more structure. So this one, he has tried to very simply represent a ring, but here 20 years later, we see that his ability to represent the jewelry in a few strokes, but very sculpturally, is much more evident. We see a lot of the same in the face. Then, and here's her face now, just the difference in the richness of color, which makes this more flat feeling painting. And this kind of gives you the feeling of a woman living within the painting. We don't get to see as much jewelry here, but Paul is fabulous at painting jewelry. Look at the way he's painted this natural pearl necklace and her earrings. Again, really just a few strokes that tell you so much. So, in short, some of the differences between this older painting, which is still fabulous, and the newer one are one, a reliance of happy accidents, which didn't happen over here in this painting, and just his confidence in the way he was painting flesh tones simply in the painter's marks, but with a greater variety of color. Now for a why it works first, next time we are going to have a part 2 of this episode where we actually talk to the artist Paul Newton about these two paintings and about his process and his experience. So until then, we'll see you next time.